In the final session of the Ohio State University Nighsonger Center's ECHO series on improving services and supports for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and mental health conditions, we will hear from Matthew Bavinka, a cross-system initiatives manager in the Office of Policy and Strategic Direction at the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, and Doug Jackson, 988 administrator at the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, who will be discussing how the departments are collaborating to make 988 accessible. Our learning objectives for today, we would like participants to be able to identify mental health risk factors, identify 988 resources for the IDDD community, and understand how to support and connect individuals with disabilities to 988. At this time, I'd like to thank and welcome Doug and Matthew to the stage. Thanks so much.
Well, thanks for having us. I am going to begin by sharing my screen. Give me just a minute to pull that up and go up full screen. All right. Hopefully you should be able to see those slides. I'm happy to be with you today, as well as Matt Bavlinka as co-presenters to talk about some work that's being done in Ohio to help bring 988 and really crisis services on the broader spectrum to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, coexisting with mental health conditions, as well as people with brain injuries. That was part of our work that we've been doing, is to not only consider people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but also more broadly, people with brain injuries as well, because sometimes based on DD qualifications in the state of Ohio, somebody with a brain injury might be not included in the services provided in Ohio, but might experience some of the same conditions that somebody who is qualified receives. So my name is Doug Jackson. I'm the 988 administrator for the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. I'll turn it over to Matt in just a second for an introduction. My background actually comes from a place of working with people with developmental disabilities for about 25 years. I started as a community residential services provider, worked into a county board position as an SSA, and then an SSA manager and director, then going to the Montgomery Developmental Center, one of the 10 state-operated developmental centers at the time. 2 of those centers were closed. The Montgomery Developmental Center was one of those closed. And that is where I met Matt. Matt and I began our work together in DD to be the Deputy Director of Stable Accounts for the state. Hopefully all of those that you serve have considered a stable account. But I won't put any more plugs in for stable account, because now we're going to be talking about 988. And that's where my current work is focused on, is the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. So with that, I will turn it over to Matt to introduce himself.
Hey, thanks, Doug. I'm Matt Bevlink. I'm the Cross Systems Initiatives Manager with Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities. So really doing any of the work that the department does that crosses into other systems. Primarily that's with youth. So we work with the Department of Education, Department of Children and Youth, Ohio Rise, and all of those other entities, but also sometimes crossing into the adult space. And as Doug said, I've been with the department for a while, and worked in the developmental center where Doug was the superintendent. So it's cool to connect with Doug again 6 or 8 years later, or whatever it's been, and partner on something that we're both interested in, and kind of combines our shared experience. So thank you.
All right, so let's talk about what services are available in Ohio to help people. Really, all people is where we're going to start, and then we're going to drill down into specifically helping people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So first, I want to talk just a little bit about 988 specifically. 988 is the suicide and mental health lifeline in Ohio. So some people think, oh, suicide, that's what 988 is all about, helping people that might be considering taking their own life. 988 is far broader than that, as a mental health or a crisis hotline for people to call. So when we talk about mental health crisis and suicide risk factors, sometimes, again, people are very narrowly focused on who might be experiencing those risk factors. They might think about people with a mental illness or a diagnosed mental health condition. They might think about people that are clinically diagnosed with depression, or who have experienced previous suicide attempts. And we can kind of lump those into those that might already be involved in a system of mental health care, substance use problems. But then as we continue down the list, you're going to see things like chronic pain, physical illness, declining function, Disability, very specific to this group here. Family problems or loss, family history of suicide, social isolation, dementia, and other forms of impaired cognitive ability. So really, when we look at this list, you could probably look down through there and find something that is near and dear to your life, something that maybe you personally have experienced or somebody that you love has experienced, because really suicide and mental health risk factors are common to any person. So as we start this, I just want to challenge you to broaden your focus on who mental health services are for. Mental health is just as important as physical health. And we're going to talk a lot about that today, from the assessment process of people we serve in the IDD population, all the way through just your general population. So what is 988? It is an easy to remember 3-digit telephone number. 988 is not a unique service or a new service. Crisis hotlines have been around for a long time, but most of the time, if you ask somebody what number to dial, at least historically, they would not know how to answer that. They wouldn't know what the telephone number was to get help. By introducing 988, a 3-digit telephone number, we're hoping that all people at that time of need, when it comes up unexpectedly, that they would know what number to call. 988 is free, it's confidential, it's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And not only is there the option to call 988, but there's also the option to text 988 to get supports, as well as use the 988 chat function, which is available from any web browser by going to 988lifeline.org. When you contact 988, if you're calling, what you're first going to hear is an automated message that allows you to select from just 3 prompts. The first prompt is if you're a veteran, you can get very specific veteran supports. So military or previous military are dialing in, they press 1 and they get support specific to them. Press 2 is for Spanish-speaking individuals, and press 3 is for LGBTQ plus supports for those under the age of 25. So some very targeted audiences, making sure people are getting appropriate supports. Then some music will play as the call is transferred, and very quickly a call is answered by a trained mental health professional. When it's answered, the person is going to engage with the help seeker by asking some questions. How can I help you? What are you experiencing? They're really trained to be empathetic listeners, and oftentimes do more listening than speaking, because if somebody is calling, if they're reaching out, it's oftentimes to be heard. And then they're gonna continue to get the support that they need through that telephone call, through a series of informal dialogue type questions that are going to guide the conversation. Is there an immediate risk? Is this just somebody that needs to talk through something a little longer term in the conversation length? So that is the magic, that is the work of a 988 call specialist, is to listen and help that person get what they need. Let me just play this quick video that's going to give you a little more insight into what a 988 call feels like.
Anyone can call 988. When they call, they will get the greeting, the message, and then after that, you'll get a kind person to pick up. Right off the bat, we want you to know that we're here to support you and we're here to help.
You're not talking to an automated system. You're talking to someone that can actively be with you in that moment.
What in this moment do you need? Is it a friend to talk to? Is it just someone to sit with you in the chaos that's happening? Or do you need services? Do you need a therapist? Do you need a psychiatrist? How can we get you those services right now?
I'm a big advocate for doing breathing exercises over the phone so that someone hears me. They know that I'm with you, I'm going to laugh with you, I'm going to joke with you.
By the end of the chat, I've gotten them to laugh. I've gotten them to be like, okay, I can figure out what to do from here.
People that watch this should know that there is somewhere they can go. There are people they can reach out to whenever they need. It's safe.
Anyone can call 988.
You can tell from the video that really a 988 response is over the phone, it's voice, it's conversation. Text and chat are very, very similar, except they're using those mediums to communicate with the person, because that's the way that the person has chosen to reach out to 988. Oftentimes, chat and text can be helpful if the individual doesn't have the option at the time of using their voice, or maybe they just don't choose to want to have that dialogue with somebody. But we see chat and text especially being used in situations like, maybe a youth reaching out because they're in a house and they want to be able to have that dialogue without others overhearing it. Maybe it's a spouse that doesn't want their spouse to be a part of the conversation or overhear the conversation. There's many different reasons why people would use chat or text, but all three options are available. So as we look at the first 2 years of 988, just in the first 24 months, almost 340,000 contacts by Ohioans to 988. So just let that sink in for a moment to help solidify the need of this resource in Ohio. About 340,000 contacts. We're now well over 400,000 as we're beyond 2 years. We're nearing 2.5 years worth of service. But the need is certainly there for people to have an option to reach out and get mental health supports. A couple other statistics on the screen that I want to point out. Our call rate is very, very good in Ohio, or our call answer rate, I'm sorry. Our average percentage of calls rolling over to a national backup center. So Ohio is part of a national network of 988 centers, but we are answering over 98% of the calls from Ohioans in Ohio. So answered by one of our 19 contact centers that are spread out throughout the state, by local people, staffed by Ohioans, where they understand the Ohio culture, they understand the Ohio resources, the Ohio systems of care. So it's really important that we are answering most calls in the state of Ohio. Last month, we were proud to reach 99.8% of the calls from Ohioans answered in Ohio. Speed to answer, 25 seconds in Ohio is the average speed to answer. That beats the national record of 36 seconds. So we're very proud of our staff who are picking up the phone in a very few number of rings. It fits into our overall crisis continuum in Ohio and what is being built out as far as behavioral health services. So we want 988 to be the place where people can reach out if they need help, that way of connecting. In addition to that, if they need additional supports, we want resources available to respond to where the person is at. So whether they're at home or in the community, that's called a mobile crisis response. And we also have very specific services for youth called mobile response and stabilization services. Both services are available to help the person where in their natural environment, where they're at home, in the community. If they need additional supports, they could go to a crisis stabilization center where they might spend sometimes as few as 23 hours, but just kind of stabilizing. If they need additional services, those are available as well, kind of longer term, before they would get into residential services. So residential services are also a place where a person can get longer term care. And then returning back into their own community to thrive. So Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services is very focused on making sure that the person can be supported where they live, having transportation and work opportunities and housing and medical care and ongoing mental health supports to help that person stay out of the crisis continuum, but if needed, that they could reach right back out to 988 and begin that crisis continuum over again. Now we're going to shift a little bit from what is 988. So that was the overview. Here's 988. Here's how it fits into mental health crisis services in Ohio. But what are we doing to connect 988 for people with disabilities? And that's the partnership that Matt referenced earlier on. And it's a very important piece that we consider every different population that is representative of Ohioans. And people with a disability are a significant population in Ohio. We want to make sure that we're providing unique ways of making accommodations for 988 and crisis services to this population. So first, we want to just make sure that everybody understands mental health is as important as physical health. I said that in the very beginning. Being a past SSA, I remember doing annual ISP assessments. And it's always been a part of the assessment that you're asking the person about their physical health. You're making sure that doctor's appointments are made and dentist appointments and eye appointments. And it's part of, ensuring the person is physically healthy. But what we want to also begin to include and normalize are conversations about mental health. So through the assessment process, starting to ask questions about how is your mental health? And at first that might seem odd because as we introduce that, somebody might say, well, you've never asked me about that before. Do you think I now have a mental health problem? Where I would like for our entire culture to get to, not just people with disabilities, is that when people say, how are you doing? They're not just talking about their physical fitness. They're talking about how they're doing mentally as well. So that should, by that nature, become a part of the annual ISP assessment process and the assessment process that continues throughout the year. So, Matt, I'm going to keep going unless you want to jump in on this. I'll look to you for how you want to participate.
I can kind of, if it works for you, I'll jump in on the next slide and kind of take over on some of the link stuff. Or I can jump in now too.
That's perfect. I'll do this one. I'll hand it off to you then after this one.
Gotcha.
The 988 for people with disabilities, what we want to consider is how does that person with a disability reach out to 988? Well, they could on their own. I mean, our goal in the disability system is to empower people with disabilities, to support them where they need supported and allow independence where they can be independent. So to help somebody with a disability know that 988 exists would be part of our task, but then allowing them to contact 988 when and if they feel it's appropriate to contact 988. But if the person needs additional supports, any person could be supported in contacting 988. It could be a parent calling for a child, a loved one calling for the person that they love, calling with them on their behalf, whatever is appropriate to support the person. So 988 call takers, or those on the answering end of 988, are trained to interact with all different types of communication styles and personal abilities. So they know that they might have to pause, they might have to wait, they might have to wait for a communication device, a message to be typed into it so that the communication device can be what is communicating with the 988 call taker. It's a very important consideration to know that quiet time or a pause in communication might be necessary. But a direct service professional can help the individual with a disability reach out. They can dial the phone, they can help type the text or the chat, they can verbally communicate with the person with a disability sitting next to them, helping to translate, whatever is necessary, that is okay. That's really up to the team and the person with a disability to decide what supports are needed when you reach out to 988. Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you to start here.
Okay, thanks, Doug. I don't think I had this slide up here.
Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, go to the next one, please.
All right.
I might have botched the order of these in mine.
That's all right. I'll just touch on this one real quick, Matt, and then I'll turn it over to you. It's also important to consider direct support professionals and their mental health. So 988 is a resource for those that we're serving with disabilities, but it's also a resource for provider agencies, both DSPs and administrative staff, for family members of those who are receiving services in the DD service system, for county board staff. So in the very beginning, I said, broaden your thought on what 988 is there to serve. It is there to serve all people.
All right, thanks, Doug. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this project that Doug and I and several others across the state have been working on for a little over a year now, I guess like 16 months, something like that. So the National Association of State Directors of DD Services sent out an RFP, I want to say December of last year, asking for states to assemble kind of multidisciplinary teams and submit an application to partner with NASDs and other states that are trying to improve crisis services for people with intellectual disabilities and brain injuries. So Doug and I scrambled, spent about a month trying to get the application together and trying to identify people who could pitch in and support this team. And I think we ended up with a really good team, and all of the agencies that participated are represented here on this slide. So we spent about a year defining some goals. We originally had 6 goals, and through kind of the work planning process, identified some of them that could be combined, and we ended up with 4 goals that we presented at the national conference. And you can kind of see the rough timelines of those there. The first one was developing accessible materials and getting those into the right hands, and surveying and finding where all of those things already existed. Because Doug has been doing this work for a couple of years, and DoDD had already been involved in some of the document development, and I wasn't aware of that. And if I'm not aware of that, and I work for this agency, then we probably need to be doing a better job of getting those kinds of things out. So we compiled a list of where all of those things were, things like easy read documents and documents in plain language, and other resources that 988 had already created. But then we also started talking about getting those things into the Ohio ISP. And with Ohio moving towards one single service plan across the state, it's kind of a unique time where we could insert that information in the assessment process, and then every single person who receives DD services in Ohio at least has some introduction to what 988 is, and then also those SSAs and anybody writing a plan for those people. So spent some time doing that. And then you can see the other goals here. I won't walk through all of these, but the bottom one there I'll touch on real quick. Suicide screening assessments are not normed for people with intellectual disabilities or brain injuries, which we think is kind of a gap. So we formed a small work group, Dr. Julie Gentili and Dr. Ilka Riddle, with some support from others on the team, started doing a literature review, and the goal will eventually be to stand up an assessment that's normed for our population. So it's going to take some time, more to come on that, but hopefully in the next year or two, we're at the point where we're creating a product that can be trialed. And this is a video that we recorded 3 or 4 months ago to provide for SSAs and QIDPs and other professionals working in our field, to just give an overview of what 988 can do for people in our system, and also for people working in our system as well. So you'll see Doug and Lisa are the 2 stars of this video, but I make a brief appearance somewhere in there.
All right, I'll go ahead and hit play. And Matt, if you can just give me the thumbs up again to make sure that it is playing and that there's audio. We never know when somebody might have a mental health emergency, and we want them to be aware that a resource exists, that if they're experiencing a mental health emergency, that they can call 988 and have somebody to talk to. 988 in Ohio is answered by Ohioans, which is important because we want somebody to be able to respond who understands the resources that are available to you, where you live or where you're calling from, and also just understand the culture that you're calling within, the local community. Crisis planning is an important part of the planning process. As we assess a person's needs, we want to be talking about their mental health needs, how healthy are they in that area of their life, and do they need supports? Are they aware of those supports? And if something changes throughout the next year, such as an immediate crisis that creates that mental health emergency, do they know that 988 is a resource for them? It's also important to know that 988 call takers are trained to serve all people in Ohio, including those with disabilities. There's a general understanding that communication might be a barrier, or that expressing the feelings might take a little longer, and asking questions that might help that person with a disability have a better experience when they contact 988 in Ohio.
The Ohio ISP is vital in addressing and planning for mental health needs because it offers a holistic approach tailored to each person. The Ohio ISP helps to identify specific mental health challenges and opportunities for support, allowing for personalized strategies that foster emotional well-being and resilience. The Ohio ISP's Healthy Living Assessment domain explores ways in which a person can be supported regarding self-care routines, ways to help a person feel supported, all the way to does a person need help making doctor's appointments? The advocacy and engagement domain takes a deeper dive into ways in which a person can be supported to advocate for their own mental health needs.
First, a person with a disability could call 988 themselves. They could also chat or text to 988 if they prefer that form of communication. However, not all people that we serve with developmental disabilities have the ability to communicate or make that connection to 988.
Should the direct support professional find themselves supporting a person with the 988 resource, the communications section of the Ohio ISP will help them navigate the conversation with the 988 representative.
That allows the interaction between the 988 call taker and the person with a disability or the staff who's assisting to address that mental health crisis.
The safety and security domain looks at ways to support a person when they are not mentally feeling their best. The social and spiritual domain sets up a system to ensure that a person has ways in which they can connect and stay connected with those that are most important in their lives. Moreover, the Ohio ISP planning process is collaborative, involving the person, their family, their friends, those most important to them, along with professionals, which ensures that mental health considerations are not just an afterthought, but a core consideration of planning.
In partnership with the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, we've created a plain language document as well as an easy read document. We also have created what is known as a materials generator for 988. The materials generator can be used as a co-branding tool so that your agency can place your brand on that and still share information about 988. That means that it's a trusted resource for your staff and those that you serve. 988 is important for all people. Professionals who are working with people with disabilities might have their own stresses, and mental health crisis can happen to anyone. On the phone with a 988 call taker, they can talk through whatever it is that they might be experiencing. And if they need more supports, they can get a referral to local supports to meet their needs. Whether it's a person with a disability, or a professional that's supporting them, or anyone even outside of the field, mental health is just as important as physical health.
Well, I was the hand model in there with the cell phone. Those were my hands, so I did make it onto the screen for a brief moment. I always like to throw out my little silly joke on that.
Might have a mental health emergency, and we want them to be aware that a resource exists.
Uh-oh.
My bad. We are going to jump back over to the PowerPoint. Sorry about that.
Couple left on here.
All right.
So
Matt?
I just wanted to share contact information for my team. That should be a clickable link. I don't know why it's two-toned there, but all of the contact information for the folks on my team is at the link or on the map below. If you're working with particularly youth who are in crisis situations, dealing with significant mental health needs, definitely get in touch with me or someone on my team, and we can steer you in the right direction. Hopefully get you some supports. We wanted to share some of the products that were developed through this Link Center partnership. One of them, you may have noticed, DODD has been creating and sending out a lot of communication boards. It's something our communications team has kind of taken the lead on, and we created one for communicating mental health needs, which I think I think it's great to see DODD doing this, creating these things that can be printed, shared, and kind of universalized to help people communicate what they're feeling. I think probably for this communication board and maybe some others, we're going to create some short videos, hopefully in the first half of 2025, to just kind of model how a DSP or an SSA can use something like this to help a person communicate. And then I think we both had mentioned the creation of these easy read and plain language documents, which are stored on, I think, both OMOS and DoDD's websites, again, with helping people to communicate and also just for awareness purposes to make sure that people are aware of this resource and how they can access it.
And just a few more things related to 988 and crisis services. So some of these were referenced in the video, but this one in particular is very unique to supporting people with disabilities who might have a hearing disability or might be using ASL for their primary way of communicating. The website 988lifeline.org actually allows somebody to click on a link and start a video conversation with a 988 call center. This is not an interpreter. It's actually a mental health professional who uses ASL to communicate. So it is just a direct connect with a 988 specialist using American Sign Language so that that person who's deaf or hard of hearing can communicate directly and get supports directly using ASL. So pretty awesome function that really does fit into those that we serve that might be deaf or hard of hearing. Talking just a little bit about what you can do then. So it was referenced the materials generator, the custom materials generator. So whether you work for a provider agency, a county board, any other stakeholder in the DD system, you can actually go to this custom materials generator and create 988 content that has your logo on it, so co-branded. What that allows you to do is share information about 988, but share it from your agency or your organization so that there's buy-in, because those that you serve know you. They know your organization. They might not know me or the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, but they know you. And so by placing your logo onto this, you're saying this is a resource we believe you should know about. This is a resource we want all of our employees and the people that we serve to know about. So this custom materials generator is a really important tool to use. Just for sake of time, I'm not going to play the video that's here about the custom materials generator, but there is a video that explains how to use it on our website when you go to use it. So you can share this with maybe with your comms team. That's your takeaway. Everybody on this call, go share it with your comms team or the person that does literature for your organization, and they can create something that represents your team. That toolkit is available from this QR code. So you could take a picture of it now. These slides, of course, are going to come out as well and be made available to you. I think they're already a download on this session. But the toolkit is there for you to access, the 988 Ohio toolkit, messaging about 988, pictures that can be used, social media shareables, all types of resources here to help people become aware of what 988 is and train people about its usefulness to all people with either a current mental health condition or in the event that some mental health crisis comes up in their life. Our goal is to increase awareness here in Ohio. About 1/3 of Ohioans know about 988. That means 2/3 do not. Our goal is that by June of 2025, at least half of Ohioans know about 988. We're not going to stop until all Ohioans know about it, but we had to set realistic goals, time-sensitive goals, so we knew that our goal could include many, many more people, actually 1.6 million more Ohioans becoming aware of 988 if we can reach 50% of awareness in Ohio. Regarding 988, if you have any questions or want to reach out to the Ohio 988 team, 988ohio@mha.ohio.gov. It comes to myself and my team, and we can respond back with answering any questions that you might have or point you in the right direction. So we have partnered with the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, working to help more people know about 988. We're going to turn it back over to Andrew and the Ohio State team to proceed forward with the echo session.
Thanks so much, Doug and Matt, for that presentation. It's great to hear how robust and comprehensive this system is, and great to hear that productive partnership between the state departments that is pushing that out there. For your reference, we will be hosting another series in the spring for DSPs, so something for us to continue to keep in mind, sharing out with our participants. We do have time maybe for one or two questions, and there was one posted in the chat that I'll share with you. In a case where an individual is experiencing a crisis but is too hyper or angry to make a decision, can 988 help bring services to that individual? For instance, if the family calls the hotline.
Yeah, we'd really look at that crisis continuum and begin to assess the need of the individual and then dispatch for that mobile portion that I referred to. So mobile crisis services. Now, those services are being built out across the state of Ohio. Some communities already have that available for both youth and or adults. Other communities are still securing those services, but the goal is to have that service available statewide.
And that was one of the goals too of our Link Center work. That's still we're still kind of in the early stages of that, but connecting MRSS or mobile crisis services with the 988 service. Some counties have a pretty robust MRSS program already, but still definitely something that needs developed. And I think OMAS just sent out an RFP for MRSS project in the last couple months.
Indeed.
Great, thank you. Let me pause to see if there are any other questions. Okay, well, if anything comes up, please feel free to use the chat, and we'll keep the conversation going as we transition into the case study portion of our ECHO session. And I'll invite our Hub team member, Robin Tierney, to the stage. Thanks again, Doug and Matt. And